saved one of the best until the end in order to allow her extra time, and that is Leela Hutchinson. She is the only female to have gone into the giant selenite caves in Mexico, and she has some extraordinary pictures of crystals that are, the size of this room. And so her new book is also available.
And so a big round of applause for Leela Hutchinson.
Thank you. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. And on the grids, El Paso is about 250 miles north of Naica, Chihuahua, Mexico. So understanding where you are and who you are. Where you are is who you are, and who you are is where you are. It's all based on the grids. So I don't know how many of you know that in Phoenix, Arizona, we're on the 33-degree latitude line. Anybody know that? Yeah. So longitude and latitude. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm excited. I have a lot to share, so I'm going to try to get right to the most important things and tell you how my work has blossomed. So this is a way you can find me. And this is probably going to be the most important. Because of this work, the energy download that I received back in 2001, my work has taken me into the direction of the divine feminine and understanding about what selenite's purpose is on the planet, to become a galactic community. So my first question is to you, how many of you have a piece of selenite? Yay! I like that. Let's see. Do I need to turn this on, or is it live? Is it? This is live? I think I like that a little bit better. So, how many of you are healers in this room? Yay. Selenite. If you don't know this about selenite, I'm sure you do. And you know what? I had a whole box in my room that I was going to bring in here tonight and share with you, the tabular kind. Selenite is pure light. It never needs cleansing. All right? It's one of the only minerals that never needs cleansing. So if you think about quartz crystal is an amplifier. But selenite is a transmitter and it's a receiver. And let me go back and show you a picture why it's a transmitter and receiver. Do you see that? So that's pure white light. And in my studies and research over the last 12 years, so I'm going to accelerate you, and then we're going to go back. In the last 12 years, my understanding is our ascension codes are encrypted into these selenite crystals. They hold that pure star water, fire, water, water, fire. And the way these selenites grew was out of pure water. So they're not like other crystals that grow with heat and pressure, like in pegmatites. This grew from a chemical water that was full of a hydrothermal mixture of hydrated calcium sulfate. And so they literally grew out of the matrix, out of the womb of the mother. And these were 1,000 feet below the Earth's surface. Okay. So with that, there's a lot to talk to you about the grid, but I think I'll get right into the story of how I got there. And then we'll do some questions. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask me as we go along. Part of this is what we're looking at is the crystalline grid. And that's what I see it as. It's one of the pictures that portrays it. Again, there she is, Goddess Selignite. So what I've learned over the years is that her mission is cell ignition. Cell ignite, cell unite. So some of the topics I was going to speak to you about tonight, but there it is. Here's another picture of the 144 facets of the double penta dodecahedron crystalline grid. And then we're going to talk about sacred geometry. So I've asked a couple of people here tonight, as we're going to do this work, with going into the crystalline caves. I'd like Journey to we've set a field with Kirby really beautifully with the Shana Ra and the crystals, but I would like Journey she brought her heart bowl I'd like to open this up in a way that we can just really connect with our hearts. So if you'd start, you come up. And if everyone would close their eyes and take a deep breath. I'd like you to feel your heart. And just feel the beating of that heart. Most of the time, we just think of our heart, most of the time we think of it as not something that's physically beating, but a spiritual place. But I'm asking you to literally locate your heart in the middle of your chest and feel your heart beating. And if you take another deep breath, I'm going to ask you now to slowly start to feel the walls around your heart soften. Nice, gentle exhale and inhalation. And as the walls melt, just find yourself connecting deeper into your heart-centeredness. And feel the deep relaxation and well-beingness that comes from this connection. Know that you're perfectly safe. You're loved. And you need a crystalline master. Reawakening now. Our work tonight is going to take us into a journey into the crystal caves. Once we connect to the crystalline grid, I'm going to ask you if you would like to join me in clearing the field where the selenite crystals are and free them from the false programs that they have been involved in for a very long time, because they've been hijacked to some degree to perpetuate and run a false program. They've been used to withhold up the false matrix. And so with your help, we're going to help free the selenite crystals. So take another deep breath into your heart, and now expand that field out to everyone in this room. And I'm going to ask the gentleman in the back of the room to please turn down the lights somewhat, not off, but just lower them, please. Yes, that's about right. No, too much. Bring them back up. And feel yourself grounding now. Your feet on the earth. And from your root chakra, just send a grounding cord all the way to the core of the earth. And imagine now that your body is a pipe. And let's expand the space inside that pipe, Feel it even in your feet. We can't make changes unless we change the way our bodies are. If we're closed down, we can't facilitate change. So by opening our hearts up and connecting with the crystalline grid and with each other, we start to open up and allow space in our bodies. And now I'm going to ask you to expand your energy field and sense that it's expanding to the size of the room in the hotel, and then move it outward to the city of Scottsdale. Just keep pushing those energy boundaries and fields out. And now just see yourself in the globe and moving outward, right through the galactic center, and expand that energy field out into the edges of the universe. That is your infinite being. That is your perfect divine mastership, an infinite being. Now I'd like you to move your awareness up to your crown chakra and reach for the highest frequency that you know of, whether it be Christ consciousness, cosmic sparks from the sun, God, Creator, and connect with that. Where there is no unworthiness, no judgment, where everything is, just is. This is where we choose to live, outside of judgment, into your mastership, your all-knowingness. And we'll begin. Thank you, Journey. This is the grid of your infinite well-beingness. This is what it looks like. It's a perfect seed crystal. So, starting off on this journey, boy, I don't like the way this looks here. Let's see what I can do. No, I don't even have, there it is. Okay. Here we go. It's not on. Okay. So, the way I started to see how the involvement of the selenite became in my life is I saw it as a crystal universe. And you can see the pylons. So I'm giving you an idea of the function of what selenite's like. You can see the sonar that's coming off at the points. And I had this rendition done by a young man in Australia that showed that the core of every planet has a crystalline structure. And so you can see from the galactic center there is like pulsar. And these are what the selenite crystals are receiving from deep space. And then the next image here is to show you that I believe there's probably many planets that have the same kind of environment that Earth has. These are exactly how the selenite crystals were formed off the minerals from the top of these desert-like mountains. And through evaporites, they were created. But the ones in Nika, Chihuahua are very unusual because they sit below a major, well, there was an aquifer that sunk, and then they grew on top of that. So to begin this story, I wanted to share with you about my family and why every step leads to your next step. And I can only show this to you through my own example. But this was my family from Arkansas. And my father's the little guy in the front. And so there's 3 generations in Arkansas. So for me, my family and my bloodline and DNA are on top of the crystals in Arkansas. So all of these things led me into a divine destiny, into those selenite crystals. And that was my father. He's passed now. Strong Scottish guy. But he grew up in this town, born and raised in a little town named Evening Shade. Has anybody remembered that on the serial? With Burt Reynolds? It's funny. Okay, so I was born in El Paso, Texas. And the reason I'm showing you this is White Sands Military Range. So we have a lot of light and dark play that's happening here. So in the military range, they control most of White Sands. Well, I didn't know as a child that White Sands is complete gypsum, which is selenite. They're small granules of selenite to make those big dunes. And so you can see the grid line going north from El Paso and actually heading south right into Chihuahua, Mexico. This is my hometown, and you can see these are the same kind of mountains where the selenite crystals are. This is the perfect environment, a very arid climate. This was McElligans Canyon, and this is where I used to hike a lot as a child, and I fell in love with rocks. And that began my interest. But you can see these are the Franklin Mountains, and this is exactly in Nika. You'll see the terrain will be very similar to this, where they found these crystals. There's a picture of the White Sands. These dunes. And this is about 30 miles east of El Paso. Very unusual. There's nothing like this in the United States. And you can see the crystals growing as they evaporate. One of the things that I researched about this is that, as you can see, Chihuahua and Delicias, which is where Nika is, you can see that this ley line, this grid line, is almost right at a northeast-southwest axis. And in my research, I had gone out to Carlsbad Caverns and parked my car and looked out over the Permian Basin and saw the gypsum beds. And I knew that the selenite deposits had to be close to the surface if they were that far down in the earth, in that axis of a southeast, southwest, and northeast direction. There's Carlsbad Caverns. Who's been there? So you know how beautiful they are. So they're full of limestone, and when the water reacts with the limestone, they create aragonite, calcite, and selenite. So these were some of the places that I had journeyed as a child that led me to have a great deep curiosity about mountains and rocks and caves. And I moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1974, and this is the Squaw Peak became my playground and where I would hike. It's right here in Phoenix. And this is something that I did for about 20 years when I lived here. Next came the Grand Canyon and started to hike down. Look at these beautiful formations, these mesas. And you can see the Bright Angel Trail leading off. And this became a great love of mine, to hike in the Grand Canyon. And there it is on the Bright Angel Trail. And then came Sedona, of course. And what we're looking at is Cathedral Rocks. And the spires in the middle are called the Mace. And I used to rock climb the Mace, and we would actually spend the night on top. It was a very, there it is, there's a better picture. We would jump, and then we would chain ourselves in and spend the night on top. So we wouldn't fall over the edge. I had an awakening. I left Phoenix, Arizona, and I moved to Northern California. And this beloved mountain of mine, I've been a gatekeeper here for 20 years, Mount Tamalpais. And where there have been found, we call them the Holy Grail crystals. They're quartz crystals, and they're included with moss. So very wet, very beautiful, celestial type crystals that are found inside Mount Tam. There's not many, and people are pretty quiet about it, but there are a few that I have seen. And there's another picture looking from the top out into the Bay Area in San Francisco and Oakland. And this is where I live, the North Bay. And then from there, I didn't move, but my curiosity took me to Quincy. This is the Plumas River, Feather River. I'm in Plumas County. This is Gold Rush country. Some of the images of the water and the tremendous amount of gold that's in the gold area of the Sierra foothills. And this is where I had a journey underneath a crystal tree. It was an oak tree, and there were huge quartz crystals that we dug out from below the tree. And that's when I knew, and I think it was 1998, that there was something coming. And I didn't know exactly what that was, but I knew this was no mistake, that I was digging crystals underneath a tree that I was afraid I was going to be stuck in. Then after that came Mount Whitney, and climbed to the top of that. We did that in a day, which was really insane, but there was such a love for the mountains and a curiosity. Mount Whitney is the tallest peak in the continental United States. And that's overlooking Death Valley. Beautiful area. And then part of this became my love for rock climbing when I lived in Phoenix, and that's me up there climbing the Big Chief. And that was taken in 2011. So how I got into the Crystal Caves were I moved to Sedona, and I started reading Godfrey Ray King and Unveiled Mysteries. Has anybody read those books? Yeah. They were profound for me, and Saint Germain came to Godfrey Ray King and in McLeod and took him on these inner journeys. And I was living in Sedona at the time. I was guided to go there, and I ran into the person that was giving me the photos. That would be the person that would take me into the Crystal Caves in January. So I met him in October down in Agua Prieta, and then I moved to Sedona, and I went into deep meditation and studies, and this became a powerful impact for me. Unveiled Mysteries, Saint Germain takes his son deep into the earth and down in Mexico, and he took him into beautiful crystal caverns. And I knew they were real. And then in January of 2001, this was October of 2000, by January of 2001, I had my invitation. And I didn't put it together for a long time. Here is a current rendition of Saint Germain in Shasta. And you can see what he's holding. It's the tube torus. I wish I could remember the lady's name who created this. She's very special. So now we come to, I love maps, so we're looking at Nika. This is where those giant crystals are located. It gives you an idea, Copper Canyon, the Sierra Madres. Okay, some other maps. And this is Copper Canyon. And this is, again, this is Tarahumara country. And the Tarahumara Indians were very mystical, and still are, very mystical Native Americans that are some of the greatest runners in the world. And the man that I got the invitation to go in the Crystal Caves was the manager for a racing team of 5 Tarahumaras that won several races in the United States, up at the Leadville 100. So they would run 100 miles at a time in the Los Angeles Crest race. And you can see what they wear. They have, their shoes are huaraches, but they glue tires to the bottom of them with leather straps. And they wear kind of like a, it's not gauze, it's like a gunny sack, but they make these skirts. And they drink this Tesguino corn you could say. It's a drink. It's got liquor in it, I'm sure, and chia seeds. And this is gives them the ability to run ultra long distances. They're known to run deer down to the point of exhaustion. Because they were so elusive, the Spanish were not able to conquer the Tarahumara because they were able to outrun them, and they lived in the canyon, Copper Canyon. So the Spaniards weren't able to really mix their DNA and mutate their gene code. That's one of the reasons I think that they're so unique. And Nika, where the crystals are found, is a Tarahumara word. It's called the Raramari is their language, and it means the place of no sun, the place of shade. They live right on the cliffs of the canyon. So there's a deep connection to the Tarahumara Indians, I believe, to the selenite crystals. So here we go. These were discovered in April of 2000. There was a small group of us in 2001. Better lighting? Okay. Again, the crystal universe. Here was our entrance. This was the El Camino Real. This was a very famous road. It's about 1,600 miles long that was used since the 1500s, if not sooner, by indigenous people. And what you're looking at is the Nika Range, and that is where the Pinollas mine is. And those crystals are found within a 200-year-old working mine. So I'd like to read this to you. The Nika selenite crystals appeared in the depths of our planet when human beings had lost the capacity for amazement, since we had already seen everything on the Earth's surface. Nika has revealed itself to us for an instant of its long geological life before it is submerged by the waters again. It is submerged by the waters again. The Nika Crystal Cave is located 300 meters below ground, filled with enormous spectacular selenite or moonstone crystals. It reveals its beauty in an atmosphere where its icy appearance contrasts with the high temperatures and its depths. Through the magnificence of its crystals, It leads us down a myriad of paths: scientific, technological, artistic, philosophical, and one involving the magic of nature. It also brings us face to face with an unavoidable responsibility, our obligation to protect and preserve it. Unfortunately, I will tell you that because it is a working mine that extracts resources such as lead, zinc, and silver, once all of the ore is out of the mine, they will allow the mine to flood again. And so the crystals will be underwater once again. It's very expensive. It costs about $500,000 a month to keep the generators moving, to pumping the water out of the tunnels in the mine. And one day there's going to be an accounting of that, and if the resources don't substantiate that kind of expense, then they'll let it flood. Its crystals, multifaceted mirrors and images lead to the various roads of knowledge and science to understand the how and when of the creation of this work of nature, challenging us to develop the technology to survive and register in images its great beauty. They also lead us to the arts so that we may share this natural heritage through the expressions of men and women sensible to its beauty and harmony, and the roads of philosophy and mysticism for the magic and peace that they convey. Selenite's mission to Earth and humanity, bringing emotional healing, stability and balance, and assisting in one's third eye visions of clarity of one's own mission of purpose. So as we went down into the caves, we were driven down because all these are man-made tunnels. And for us, we went down in a truck, our expedition team, where you can see there's plenty of gypsum on the ground, and they did spray paint some of the tunnels. They bring in air shafts of cool air of about 100 degrees, because it's, again, one of the most hostile environments for miners to work in. And in 1910, this is the Cave of Swords. This was a geological wonder that brought scientists from all over the world to study the nature. This is at 200 to 400 feet below the Earth's surface. When it's that close to the surface, it's saturated with sediment. This is satin spar, which most of us have, instead of the tabular kind, which is the window selenite. That's the kind that I use and work with. The satin spar are the long wands that have striations in them, and they're translucent, not transparent. So you can see these are saturated with sediment, and this satin spar is on the roof at 200 feet, and you can see it's almost black. So when they open this up, it's like a Great Barrier Reef. And I want you to imagine, though, even though this is static, if you can move with the multidimensionality of this is a living reef of consciousness in these crystals. And these crystals are probably maybe 4 or 5 inches long. Some grow to 3 feet, the blades. Here are some of the longest. And that gentleman right there was on our expedition team. His name is Carlos Lascano, and he is probably the greatest spelunker in Mexico. He's been into over 3,000 caves. And see where he's looking at, that matrix that's all kind of white? That's because the miners have gone in there and broken off those pieces and sold them on the black market. And I'm sure if you've been to Tucson, you've seen selenite pieces from Mexico that came out of this particular mine. This is the type of machinery that is used to bust a hole in the bedrock. And when the Delgado brothers, who were a couple of miners, were sent in to extricate or determine where the vein of silver was, they were astonished when they punched that hole that this steam came out, and as they crawled in, these giant selenite crystals were in there for the first time being exposed. How that happened was, I believe in 1970, they drained the aquifer to a level below 1,000 feet. And so it had been sitting there empty, drained of any water in from the fissures in the bedrock. And it wasn't until 2000 that she revealed herself to us. So I'm showing you this picture because of the malfunction of cameras. These cameras do this because of the intense heat. Digital cameras don't work, only the 35 millimeter that are manual. And that's why we were able to be in there as a team to explore these caves. So I'm going to take you into the first small cave. And I'm going to show you images later that they're going to connect the two. But this is called the Cave of Dreams at that time. And you can see that Carlos and I were climbing up. I'm up there already. And I had never been in there before, obviously, and wasn't fully prepared to what was going to happen. Because right now on the outside, it's about 102 degrees. But as I climbed through, you can see that the deep humidity, almost full saturation, and the heat was like a convection oven. It just slammed us. So the reason I wanted to bring down the lights just a little bit, if possible, is because as we look at these crystals, they actually will help activate. Many times when I show these images, as I have for the last 13 years, what's happening, there's a transmission that's happening. And a lot of people go to sleep for a little bit at a time, and because it's a lot to download. I don't know if you're familiar with Drunvalo. I'm sure you are, Melchizedek. He speaks about the ETs that he works with, and he tells of their history. And he said that they were on the surface of the planet, and that he still continues to work with them, but they actually went into the selenite crystals. So these conscious beings lived there for quite some time, and then he said from there they moved into giant geodes about 200 miles deep within the earth. So now I'm taking a journey up a crystal waterfall. It's not a waterfall, but because of the flanged crystals and their pyramidal-like shape, it looks like I'm just climbing up or walking up, but believe me, there's no light in here. Zero light. And so what you're looking at is I have a miner's helmet on, and I'm taking my first steps, but believe me, I'm crawling. But I want you to start to look at the sacred geometry in here and the light emanating from the crystals. And imagine that no one had really ever been in here before. And so our job was to explore as far as we could, to feel the outside edges, if that was possible, within a very short amount of time. We were quite altered, so I didn't know how long we had been in there, but it was way past 30 minutes or more, which was extremely dangerous to us, and we didn't understand that at the time. We just ignored it. But at 107 degrees, your organs start to shut down. So it looks like I'm having fun, but I'm not. I'm pretty scared, but really curious, and felt very protected. But you can see the pylon growing there, off to the left. Not easy to climb over. And moving into the Boca de Tiburon. So the shark's mouth, shark's teeth, and looking at some very unusual crystals that are forming. You see the sacred geometry at the top. And there's another pylon. I'm wondering how many of you have had past lives in Atlantis. You raise your hand. You remember them? Yeah, that's why you're here. So it is in my own deep knowingness that these crystals were part of a programming. They were used in a program, and they were probably programmed before the fall of Atlantis. And it was called the Atlantean Pylon Interface Network. And there were many good things that came in through this transmission. I believe there's 24 clusters inside the Earth, and this is one of 24. But then they were encoded with reversed codes, and they were used to perpetuate false programs so that we would fall asleep and be addicted to the familiar. And that takes many, many forms. So what I'd like to do tonight as we get a little further down the road here is to do, by connecting to the heart, to the crystalline grid, is to send our light codes into these selenite crystals. Would you be willing to do that with me? Okay. So at this point, I've reached pretty much the edge. We couldn't really feel that it was going to go any further than this, and this is when we had to turn around and get out of there. Again, you can imagine now there's no light in there, so what you're looking at is the flash of a camera bulb. Well, it wasn't a bulb, was it? I guess it would be battery operated. And so as we hurried to get out, and that was part one. We cinched up our belts. We must have all lost about 5 pounds of water weight. And it took us about an hour to recover. Actually, this picture, even though this is after we recovered after an hour, I guess, yeah. And we sat in the air shafts in the tunnels and drank Gatorade. So you can imagine at 102 degrees, you would think Gatorade would be really hot. But because it was so hot in the caves, it actually was cool. It felt cool at 102. So the man with the red underwear, long underwear, and coveralls, this is the head. He was the chief of security that guided our team in there. So he was really accustomed to the heat, because that's all he did was take off his coveralls to his waist and wear his long underwear. Because on top, it's in January, so we're looking at about, it was probably about 36 to 42 degrees on top. This was the Eye of the Queen. And as we went into this is where the giant crystals were. And there's Alejandro, looking like he's fresh as a daisy. Not really, but quite used to it. This is what the National Geographic team 6 years later decided that they would create. And these are biosuits with respirators using low technology, which were cores of cylinders of ice, and they were sewn into like a jacket on the interior, and they wore it close to their chest. So that could give them at least a half hour of exploration inside without any kind of organ failure or going unconscious. Now this is an interesting picture. Do you see the rope on the side? We call that the dead man's rope because a couple of the miners, not the Delgado brothers, but some other ones, once these were discovered, they tried to go in there and hack one out. And as they were trying to do that, one became unconscious because of the heat. The other one panicked and left. And when they found him the next morning, he was cooked to death. He died. And that's the rope. So again, you can see where these massive crystals, they're over 1 million years old, and they're the slowest growing crystals on the planet. Nothing grows slower than this. It grows the width of a hair, a human hair, every 100 years. So again, you know the story, you'll find that in my book. These pictures were given to me. I actually took them out of a trash can because they were cold. They could not be used. So, but anytime that you've got to have some kind of an idea of proportion, so there's always going to be a human being in a crystal like this, so it can show you the size. And this was the picture that was implicated, the crystals of being the largest on the planet, when it was published in the Smithsonian Magazine in April of 2002, which was 2 years after they were discovered. Our team was in there in January of 2001. Any questions? Yes, King.
Leela, has there ever been determined a specific note that these crystals are attuned to?
I've been trying to find that out for 13 years. I will tell you this. Yes, you want to repeat the question? You want me to repeat it on this? He wanted to know if there was a specific frequency or a tone, am I correct, that was emitted. I will tell you that I heard it. I heard it. It was a very low hum. And I almost was in disbelief. I was so altered, I didn't know if it was me, but it wasn't. There was definitely a generated hum. I don't know what tone it is. I've been trying to find that out. I've been trying to find out the light and the Hertz cycle of selenite, but I haven't found the right scientist yet to help me to do that. So, yes?
Would that tone have anything to do with the crystallization of those crystals? Or the development, forming of them?
Well, that's a good question as well. It's my theory that a couple things happen in sacred geometry. There's a direct relationship with metals, precious metals like silver and crystals. They sing to each other. Okay, gold, that's why quartz crystal, there's a saying that miners say, where there's gold, you'll always find quartz crystal. But where there's quartz crystal, you won't always find gold. But you can be sure of when you find gold pockets, deposits, there's quartz crystal growing around it. So there is a alchemical relationship, a synergistic relationship between the two, all right, that sing to each other to manifest both crystal and precious metal. Does that answer your question? Sort of? Okay. Do you want to rephrase it again? Okay. Okay. So here's something really interesting. See all of that looks like druzy, that snow? Well, believe it or not, What that is molecules of selenite that were competing to create shape. Because that wasn't a normal thing. It wasn't like these were pushing up against each other and grinding. It's just that this was like a residue of excess crystal that didn't form into a shape. Interesting. If there'd been enough, there'd be another crystal formation. It's sort of like powder. It's crystal. And no, this is not because people were walking on it. And you know how fragile selenite is. It's a 2 on the Mohs scale. No, nobody had been in here walking around on that. No. You can see on the ledges up there to the right? Nobody'd be walking on that either. So we were astonished. We couldn't, it took years for us to find out what is this. So it's actually particles of selenite that could not find enough to create a form. Yes, but it wasn't, how did that form? It formed out of the walls. So the crystals grew directly out of the matrix at every angle. So they started off just like you would put salt in water, then it would evaporate, and the crystals grew like this. So it grew right out of the womb of Gaia. Again, they were not like typical crystals that are grown through heat and pressure. They were formed through water. So those were the 2 lucky pieces I was able to take out of the mine. There's our photographer. This is one tired crew. I had an extreme headache. Very dehydrated. This is what it looks like today in 2010 with National Geographic. So do you remember this entrance? See that? So I was really surprised to see that they came in and whitewashed it all. There's the door again. See it back there to the right? And then they changed it, put computers in, scientists, and then away they went. This is what it looks like at the end of the day. So this is really interesting. This is a crystal formation that's very unusual. It's called a speleothem. Okay? Speleothem is a secondary mineral deposit formed in a cave, usually through water seeping through cracks. But they'd never seen one that unusual before. So this is the first time on planet Earth. A couple other things I'll tell you about this place. When they looked into an anhydro, which is a water bubble inside a crystal, they found that that water bubble was full of tree pollen, and that tree pollen was over 30,000 years old. So that shows you that in that time, Mexico was covered in a forest before it became desert. The other thing they found were 3 new microbes. And my interest is getting stronger and more curious about microbes and the high degree of intelligence microbes have. So when they found these microbes out of South Africa, they wondered how. There was one of those microbes that had never been found on the earth before, and one that had come from South Africa, because this is what the scientists do. They track everything. And so the importance of NICA was to see what kind of microbes could exist in extreme hostile environments. So how did a microbe from South Africa be in NICA? Anybody have an idea? Well, it's the aquifers. So it's this deep aquifer that happened millions of years ago in New Mexico. It was like an inland ocean. And as the water seeps, there's probably, the way the water works, I don't think it's locked in. This is my theory about it. I think these waterways breathe, and they come and they go, they expand and they contract, and I think the water pools and moves underground. Yes? No, that's a freshwater lake that Ron Coleman is selling. So that's what they do. There's a tremendous amount of quartz crystal on the bottom. But that's a freshwater lake. So that's not the same as an aquifer that is underground. But it's a good question. By the way, when they measured, they took 1 square inch of the water, and they found over 10 million viruses and bacteria in this water in the caves. Really potent environment. How's everybody doing? Are you still awake? Okay. All right, so this is giving you an idea with the backlighting and the research they've done. This is what the caves look like now. So you can see there's 4 explorers in there. They're actually scientists. We were the explorers. We weren't the scientists. See that pylon there? That's the one in front. It's facing us. That's the longest one and probably the oldest, and it is the theory that it fell probably through pole shift because our planet has flipped more than once since its creation. So it probably broke and fell. And those pylons are about 60 tons. Now, does anybody know a gentleman by the name of Peter Champeau? Yes, we remember him. I worked in collaboration with Peter, and I brought to him the selenite crystals. And I asked him if he would delineate his earth rings over Nika. And he said, well, why would I do that? It's underground. It doesn't really matter. But he took it on, and he was blown away. And so I paid him for his research because I wanted to know if these earth rings were applicable to Nika, and they certainly were. And the way an earth ring is that you take natural geography and you can see lenticular curves, right? So you see the Los Conchos River? So what you're looking at is a cube octahedron, right? Can you see the cube? Can you see it kind of move into 3 dimensions? Yes. So when Peter, it was the July 17th, 2010, when he submitted this to me, it blew my mind. He said, oh my God, here is the sacred geometry overlaid Nika perfectly. So as we were discussing it, at the very same time I got an email about a new crop circle in England. Okay, what is it? It's a multi-dimensional cube. Can you see how many cubes are in? Look how many. Can you see it? Can you see it moving? That's great. Hyperdimensional. This is how we move in and out of dimensions. So it's at the same days. You think they were giving us a message? They were giving us a message. I think the selenite crystals are very important to humanity, and I think they're important to the evolution of us becoming a galactic community. I think they tie us in very deeply. I also believe that these crystals were here to help seed the planet. Through my studies and knowingness in the last 15 years, they may have come from Sirius, and they were here with encodement to help stabilize the planet after a pole shift and to stabilize climate. so that we could perpetuate the Earth's people again for another seeding. But that was way before Atlantis. So remember I was telling you that I had my theory about these selenite crystals that would probably be on top of the earth as below, as above, so below. This is the road to Carlsbad, and you can see the limestone. And if you don't know what limestone is, it's dead microorganisms, dead microbes. So out where I had stopped in 2008 and stopped the truck, and I looked out to the south and the Permian Basin, I found the people that showed up in Arkansas in 2008 that there indeed was a selenite deposit, and it was owned by the military. And why did they own it? Because before safety plate glass was ever invented, they used selenite as the windows for their aircraft. And why did they do that? Because you can pierce selenite, but you can't penetrate it. There's too many sheets like mica, so it can't be penetrated. So this deposit, and these are my crystals. I have brought several of these pieces that are directly connected to the ley lines of Nika. And this is on the surface. So as I started to understand the proper uses of gridding, selenite is, and if you want to think about this for your own home, selenite is great for gridding property. And there's my friend, holding a beacon. So you find the tallest portion of your land, and you get a vertical piece, and you actually set it up in a vertical way so that it stellates over the property. You know what I mean by stellate in energy, right? Stellation is like a star, stell, so you have lines of energy, and it creates like a protective shield over your land or in your home. This is one of the ways we cleansed it. And there we go. And there it is. So I can go on, and I know it's late. So would you like to do a meditation? And the meditation will be, we're going to go into the selenite crystal caves. Yes? Okay. Now you all have an image in mind about what the selenite crystals look like. And our mission is that we're going to free, with our light codes and the love that we have here, and the beings that we are, the perfect masters that we are, playing in these earth suits, sending our light codes to help release the hijacking of these selenite crystals that have been used against their will to perpetuate a false program that is now collapsing, and we all feel it and we all know it. We're going to let go of the past. We're going to complete one more layer of our participation in the fall of Atlantis and its misuse of crystals. So I ask you to now take a deep breath in and bring it into your heart. And exhale. Bring another one into your heart, and this time I'd like you to feel your heartbeat. Feel the beauty of that. That perfect all-knowingness of your heart that continues to beat with the love of who you are. Now, on your next breath in, I want you to move it from your heart right into the double pentadodecahedron, the 144 facets of the crystalline grid. This is the new grid that has come online since December 21st, 2012. This is the new earth Merkaba. This is the grid of your infinite well-being. This is a place that we can go to and use to receive incoming energies, and through groups like this, with intention and with focused intention, we can help heal ourselves, each other, and planet Earth, our mother. So connect deeply with that crystalline grid, which is your birthright. You helped create her. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to, and I'm praying you know what a tetrahedron is. It's a 3-sided pyramid, or you can think of it as a triangle. And in this is what they showed me. What you're going to do is you're going to take it from your heart, and as you inhale, you're going to load it up with all of these tetrahedrons in your heart. And when you exhale, I want you to imagine a column of those tetrahedrons, those light-encoded tetrahedrons, moving straight through to Mexico, into Nika, going down, down, down 1,000 feet into those crystal caves, and infusing those crystals with those tetrahedrons. Can you all see that? Okay, and even if you can't, you can just intend it. So let's take a deep breath into the heart and build charge. And that means you hold it into your heart. Hold it. And we'll do this 3 times. Now when you exhale, send the tetrahedrons in a column right into the Nika crystals. Another breath. Build charge. Build charge in your heart. And exhale. Tetrahedrons right in there, all those codes. With that intention of freeing them. With your love. And one more. Deep breath. Build charge. And release. So it is. And if you didn't know where you're standing, we're standing on what Tib has showed us today is how the energy flows in the Metatronic shield. And just imagine this surrounding your body now in this highest frequency. As I brought you earlier into your higher awareness, I just want you to reach up again now to whatever that is that you connect with. That beautiful feeling of a connection, whether it's God, Creator, Source, Christ light, cosmic sparks from the sun, whatever that is that brings in for you that complete well-being and connected to the crystalline grid. I want to thank every one of you deeply from my heart for being here and completing what I would say is destiny of letting go of the past now and clearing more of the karmic experience of Atlantis as we move into our ascension. I love each and every one of you. I'm grateful to you. And we'll close this now. Thank you.
You